All right, so today's notes is over additive relationships. Last time we talked about a multiplicative relationship, which was dealing with multiplication and division. So an additive relationship compares the independent and dependent quantities of a relationship using addition or subtraction. Additive relationships can be represented as tables, graphs, and equations, just like a multiplicative relationship. Now, additive relationship is also going to have an equation. We're going to think of this once again like our instructions. So our equation is y equals x plus b, where y, once again, is the dependent variable, also known as the output. X is our independent variable, also known as our input. And then the letter b is going to be our constant, our rule, our pattern. Now you may ask, well, why are we using two different letters for the constant? We use K and we use B now. Well, in 7th grade, the equation's going to change up again using different letters. So just kind of don't worry about that right now. Now, something to note. When graphing, the graph will start on the y-axis, which is different than our multiplicative. And I'll explain what that means in just a few moments. So here's an example. We want to determine if the relationship is an additive relationship. So when we have a table like this, okay, something to note, whatever's on top is going to be your independent variable. So I want to ask myself, how do I get from x to y? What is happening here? Well, there are two ways I can get from 1 to 3. I can either add 2 or multiply by 3. In order for it to be our rule, it has to happen every single time. So to get from 3 to 5, I can add 2, but there's really nothing I can multiply. Going from 5 to 7, I can also add 2. So we would say in this situation that plus 2 is going to be our rule. So now when I write my equation, I'm going to start off the same. I'm going to start off writing y equals x, and then I'm going to write my rule, plus 2. And that's how we write an equation for an additive relationship. Now, you are going to have to know how to read a graph, so let's go through on how to set this up. Remember from last time, you need to label your x and y axis. And we're going to just label it input and output since that's what the table has. You also need to number, okay, your axis. And then we can graph. However, we need our ordered pairs. Excuse me. Now, to get our ordered pairs, we actually already have them. It's from the table here. So remember, ordered pairs go x, then y. So my first ordered pair from the table is going to be 1, 3. And then 3, 5. Then 5, 7. Now I can plot these on my graph. So 1, 3, 3, 5, and 5, 7. And I'm going to connect my dots to make my graph and have it continue. Now, just like before, we need a starting point for the graph. And I'm going to figure that out mathematically. So I'm going to add a little bit on to my table. So I want to know when x is 0, what would y be? Well, if I follow my rule, 0 plus 2 gives me 2. When I go to graph it, since 0 is the x, that means I do not move up at all. I'm sorry, I do not move over. I'm just going to move up to 2. And now I can connect. So your graph for an additive relationship, like we said previously, will start here on the y-axis. It will not start in the origin. So that's one way we're going to be able to tell the difference between the two relationships. All right, go ahead and try this video on your own. I want to see if you can fill out the table, figure out the rule, and write the equation. All right, so looking at this, I obviously can't figure out my rule from just having a blank here. So I need to look at this. To get from 2 to 8, I can either add 6 or multiply by 4. Let's see, from 6 to 12, I can add 6 or multiply by 2. The only thing that is consistent is the plus 6. That means that is our rule. So if I add 0 plus 6 gives me 6. 8 plus 6 gives me 14. Now on this one, I'm going to have to work a little backwards. I'll have to subtract 10 minus 6, which gives me 4. So our rule is plus 6. And your equation should be y equals x plus 6. All right. So I want to determine if this is an additive relationship. Based on this graph, I should be able to look at it and see, is it additive or multiplicative? I do that by looking at where the graph starts. Well, the graph is starting here on the y-axis, therefore, it is an additive relationship. When you have a graph, I would put your dots on it, so that way it's a little easier to see your ordered pairs. So in my table, I'm going to write my ordered pairs. I have 0, 3, 1, 4, and let's go with 2, 5. So that means for my first coordinate, 0 is x, 3 is y. So now I need to figure out my pattern. Well, to get from 0 to 3 using either addition or subtraction, I'm going to add. To get from 1 to 4, I'm going to add 3, and same thing here. So my rule is plus 3, therefore my equation is y equals x plus 3. All right, this last example is a star example, meaning this has been tested on the star test before. Go ahead, pause the video, and let's see what you got. All right, so taking a look at this, I see I need to go from 12 to 5. Well, if I look at my answer choices, I see things about a multiplicative relationship. Obviously, I know 12 times 7 does not give me 5, so therefore I can get rid of B, and we're going to go ahead and get rid of D. So that just leaves us with A and C. Remember, I'm going down. I'm going from 12 to 5. To get there, I do minus 7. Same here. Therefore, my rule is minus 7, so the only correct answer is going to be C. Remember, additive, we can have subtraction. Now, I'm going to expect you to know how to identify the relationship based on just the graph alone. So looking at this graph here starts at the origin, therefore this is a multiplicative relationship. This graph, the second graph, starts on the y-axis, therefore this is an additive relationship. Also in a table, if you're given x is 0, let's look at this here. Okay, I see x is 0 and y is 2. Because the 2 is not 0, this is going to be an additive relationship. Okay, if I see in my table that I have 0, 0, I should automatically know that's going to be a multiplicative relationship due to the fact that 0, 0 is the origin. All right, let's talk about your assignment for today. So if you head over to Google Classroom underneath classwork, week 15, you're going to see your additive and multiplicative homework assignment. It is a combination of both. So if I click on it, a couple of questions in there, but some of these things are, is it multiplicative, is it additive? Writing the equation. Okay, hopefully you took good notes so that way you can get through this. Remember, if y'all have any trouble, you can come to tutoring for help. Also, please know that next week, the 8th and the 9th, depending if you're an A or a B day, we will be having a test over the multiplicative and additive relationships.